Our learning objective. Today we will identify motivations and reactions of literary characters. Literary characters, if you remember, are characters that are from literature. On the count of three, please read your learning objective. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Okay, on the top left of your Cornell notes is a spot for the learning objective. Some of it has already been filled in for you. Go ahead and fill in the three blanks, which are identify, motivations, and finally reactions. Okay, so motivations. The first question on the left of your Cornell note says, what is motivation? Motivation is the reason people do the things that they do. So on number 1 on your Cornell notes, fill in reason for the first blank. Fill in reason for the first blank. Okay, so motivation is the reason people do the things they do. In real life, we may never know why people act in certain ways. As literature critics, however, we're able to see that we can look at literature and be able to analyze the reactions or the motivations of literary characters. For example, what could possibly have made your brother think he could dance? Let's pretend you have a brother, even if you don't. Um, maybe he heard a song that he liked, or he's trying to copy his favorite video dance move, right? And he's trying to make himself look cool. Whatever it may be, what his motivation depends, right, on the person. Or if we have this little girl here, it says, why did this little girl's best friend suddenly find a new best friend? Well, what was the little girl's motivation to leave her alone? Was she being rude to her and simply being mean? Or was the little girl who is now alone being mean? We're not really sure. Maybe she was innocent, right? But either way, sometimes we don't know why people act the way that they do. Hopefully, as we are literary critics, we can figure out why people do the things they do. Like we figured out that Jimmy Valentine could crack safes, and he was motivated to crack a safe for Annabelle, right? Annabelle Adams, his love. All right, motivation. Continued. In literature, you will find plenty of clues to characters' motivations. We're going to use the following clues to find out what makes a character tick. Okay, uncover a character's motivation by paying attention to the following. Number 1, what the character says. Number 2, what the character does will give us insight or information about clues to their motivation, what made them react that certain way. If underneath number 1, and try to squeeze it in there, you can write what characters say plus does equals motivation. So just write down character says plus character does equals motivation. Try to shorten it. Somewhere on your Cornell notes, squeeze it in there. Okay, then think about the outcome of the character's actions, right? And that's the inference part. That's what we keep talking about. I infer, it's that guess based on clues. So what two things can help us down here? What two things can help us identify motivations of characters? Well, number 1, we said what a character says plus what a character does. That gives us clues about motivation. Let's look at this example. It says, which words reveal Shayla's motivation for working after school? Hey, Shayla, said Jessica. I haven't seen you at the mall all week. Where have you been? Shayla shrugged. I'm babysitting for Mrs. Davies. Babysitting? Why are you wasting your time with some crying kid? You should be with your friends. My parents said that if I want to take ballet lessons, I have to pay for them myself. Okay, so which words revealed Shayla's motivation for working after school? Hopefully you said that the bottom portion, My parents said that if I want to take ballet lessons, I have to pay for them myself. Again, Shayla's words show here that she needs to earn that money to pay for things that she likes, like ballet lessons. Okay, so next one. This is actually not in your notes, even though there's a pencil there. If you want to write it, you may, but you don't have to. There's kind of a lot of space. So, what is a reaction? A reaction, we're not talking about a science reaction, right? Chemical reaction. We're talking about a person's reaction to someone or something. Here we go. Because he hears music, Jim decides that he can break into dance. So he has reacted to the music that he hears. Overhearing her friends talk about her old clothes made Sarah sad. So she reacted by being sad by hearing what her friends had to say about her. Here's a good quote. Life is about 10% what happens to us and 90% how we react. Sometimes things happen to us that we don't enjoy. And sometimes it really just matters up to whatever we decide to do for us to figure out how it's going to affect our lives. If somebody decides to say mean things about you, um, 90% of it will be how you react. Oftentimes, when people are rude or offensive, and if they are ignored and we walk away, we have peace. But if we don't, then we all of a sudden become aggravated and out of control, and we even become people we don't recognize. And all of a sudden, we've reacted in crazy ways. So, the worst, what this quote means is that the worst things can happen to you. But really, what matters the most is not what happens to you, but how you react to it. Here's an example again. Your teacher asks you to put away your lock. You put it away, but then take it back out 5 minutes later. What would most likely be your teacher's reaction? A. She does nothing, or B. She writes you an infraction. And hopefully she doesn't do nothing at all, um, but or anything I should say, but that she does something about it and there's some kind of consequence. All right, here's the next one in our Cornell notes you need to write. Okay, it says the question is what drives the problem that a character faces? Setting and historical context are the answer. So go ahead for, um, oh, it's already filled out. For number 2, it says setting and historical context often drive the conflicts. Go ahead and write down conflicts for number 2. That's the blank, conflicts. Setting and historical context often drive the conflicts that characters face. For example, the conflict that drove these people to march was racism, right? And they wanted everybody to be equal. There in the picture in the middle, you can see Martin Luther King Jr. And they're all trying to do something about civil rights and the civil rights movement and how people should be treated equally. So again, the setting is important and the historical context drive the conflicts because they tell us what the problems are of those time eras. So the next question, what is setting? We talked about setting, what setting is. Setting is the time and place in which the events of the story occur. Go ahead and fill that in your blank. Time and place in which the events of the story occur. What is historical context? Historical context, listen to the blank part here, the customs or way of life. Go ahead and fill in way of life for number 4. Followed by people of the era. Followed by people of the era, which is, an era is the period of years, fill in years, in which the story is set. So again, that next box there, it's number 5. Go ahead and put setting. Setting plus customs is equal to the historical context. So it takes both of these things to make up historical context. All right, historical context. What does historical context refer to? It refers to the beliefs popular. Historical context refers to the beliefs. Go ahead and fill in beliefs for number 6. Beliefs popular during a particular time. For example, the first one we have is social. Second one is political, economic, cultural, and intellectual beliefs. The way that we handle our money, the way that we vote, the way that we spend our money on taxes, the way that we think. Maybe some people thought the world was flat at one point and now we know it's round. Different culturals think differently, right? So go ahead on your Cornell notes, fill in for the examples. S is social, P is political, E is economic, I is intellectual beliefs, and finally C is cultural. You might want to pause the video here so that you can fill in your answers. Alright, setting an historical context, let's look at an example. Which example tells you something about the historical context of a story? A. When Wilson lost his hair after medical treatments, his friends all shaved their heads in sympathy. Does that show historical context? Or B. The year was 1851. Slaves were considered property, and those who escaped were hunted down. Or C. Waves crashed against the sea wall with terrifying force. The hurricane had reached land. And it's pretty obvious, right? Because we see a year here that historical context is actually, the second one here. The year was 1851. Okay, so what are the steps to figuring out motivations and reactions of literary characters? Number 1, you read passage carefully. Really, repeat after me. Read passage carefully. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Read passage carefully. Number 2, you identify characters' behaviors. Identify characters' behaviors. On the count of 3, please read. 1, 2, 3. Identify characters' behaviors. Number 3, identify characters' reactions. How do they react to things? Identify characters' reactions. On the count of 3, please read. 1, 2, 3. Identify characters' reactions. Number 4, make an inference about a character's motivation. Make an inference about a character's motivation. Why did they do the things that they did? And what can we infer about their motivations? Again, there were some blanks on there. The first blank is read. Second one is characters. The third one is, the second one is identify. The third one is characters. And the fourth one is inference. Okay, so number 1, what is motivation? Mrs. Perez will ask you to raise your hand in just a bit and to answer her. So what is motivation? Hopefully you said motivation is the reason people do the things that they do. Okay, number 2, what motivates a child to cry when they are lost? Number 2, what motivates a child to cry when they are lost? Raise your hand or Mrs. Perez will call on one of you. Okay, good. Hopefully you said a child can cry because they're scared, right? And they're trying to figure out what to do next. Number 3, why is it important to be able to identify characters' motivations and reactions? Number 1, it makes you a better writer, makes you a better critical reader, and it helps you critique literature in a better, higher understanding type of way. Okay, so independent practice is something you're going to do on the side. You're going to do 4 to 5 sentences on why Panchito was motivated to keep going to school even when it was hard. Why was Panchito motivated to keep going to school even when it was hard? Go ahead and answer this on a separate piece of paper. It shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes. Give me a couple sentences. Why did he keep going to school? Why didn't he just stay working in the fields? Even when his brother Roberto couldn't go, why is it that he did? Okay, and that concludes our lesson for the day. Make sure that all of your Cornell notes are complete. And Mrs. Perez will come around in just a bit and stamp your notes. Up next, we'll be reading Passage to Freedom by Shiun Sugihara. And this is set in the Holocaust time frame in Germany. In a bit, Ms. Perez will ask you to grab your textbooks according to your number of your seats.